Hey, what's up, everybody out there? It is Patrick with another edition of Patrick's Reviews. Remember, you can find all the reviews over at patricksreviews.com. We got the new website up and going, and it's actually pretty cool what's going on over there. We have reviews right now for Cats, for Elf, Napoleon Dynamite, and now we're going to review 2000's Almost Famous. Now, this film, I'm going to be honest with you, has always been one of my favorite movies, but it's been about 10 years since I last watched it. So the question is going to be asked, is it as good as I remember it being? Or is it one of those that just the memory of the movie is far outweighed by the realism and realistically what the movie is? We're going to find out now on Patrick's Reviews. Thanks. Remember to hit the website to go over and like all of those social media accounts. Now, in regards to this film, you might, I'm sure, have heard of it. Most people have. It was nominated for a few Academy Awards. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. It's running a 7.9 out of 10 over on IMDb and actually an 89% over on Rotten Tomatoes. So almost hit that 90% mark. So there's about a 10% difference between IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. The film is, of course, directed by Cameron Crowe. You might know him from other films as Say Anything, which was one of his first movies, Jerry Maguire, Elizabethtown, Aloha, Vanilla Sky. Yeah, he is a very famous director, and if I'm going to be honest with you, probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite directors working today. And this film was an autobiography or a semi-autobiography of Cameron Crowe when he was a young Rolling Stone reporter. The actual group that Crowe toured with as part of this movie, let's say, because this isn't, like I said, it's a semi-autobiographical movie, was the Allman Brothers Band. This was the group that he was on the buses and stuff with, and Greg Allman actually didn't trust him when he was on the buses, thought he might have actually been a narc, which is kind of funny. And the famous plane crash scene from the movie is also taken from something in Crowe's life because he was actually touring with The Who when they almost crashed in a plane. So that's interesting as well. Now, the lead character played here so excellently, I think, by Mr. Lee. His name just escaped me. I can't believe it. Jason Lee. Played excellently by Jason Lee here. Was actually kind of modeled after Glenn Fry from the Eagles. So that's some pretty neat, interesting trivia about the movie here. Now, something else. The film was a commercial failure, which is very, very interesting, I think, because it had about a $60 million budget, but it only grossed about $35.5 million domestically and a little bit more overseas. So it did barely make its budget back. It did about $47 million overseas. So you made about $10 million. And I say barely because that's not really that big for someone of Crowe's stature. But this was kind of a pet project he had brewing for years before it was recorded. Now, I did mention the Academy Awards, and this film was nominated for a few and actually won. Cameron Crowe won for Best Screenplay for this movie, and Kate Hudson and Frances McDormand were nominated for Best Supporting Actress that year. The year being 2000 when the film was made, and they lost to Angelina Jolie from Girl Interrupted. So, not sure, that's a hard choice there. That's three incredible performances that you're talking about going up against there. Now, let's talk about the movie. All right, that's all the backstory and the fun parts of it. Let's actually get to the review. And first off, you have to know, and this is going to be stating the obvious because of what the film is and what the movie is about, but this movie is driven by music. And I'm not talking about just the songs from the fictitious band Stillwater that's in the movie. I'm talking about the entire soundtrack and score of the film is what drives the film. The performances are great. We'll get to that in a second. But if you are a music fan, you have to watch this movie just for that. Just for that. There's little teeny tiny things, right? There's teeny tiny things in the movie that really stand out when it comes to music. Just small background scores, 10 seconds of music here and there, a little piece here, a little piece there as things are going on that really set the mood. And how I'm going to put it is, it almost puts you into the tour that the group is on itself. And the way the movie is shot also is part of that. Cameron Crowe's direction is part of that it really puts you into this idea of you're almost on tour with this fictitious band. And I keep saying fictitious band because it's not a real band. There is a band called Stillwater. If you Google Stillwater, you're going to find a Southern rock band called Stillwater that is not the same band that is in this movie, okay? So, music, like I said, drives this film. But the other thing that drives the film is the script. Cameron Crowe, like I said, is one of my favorite directors, and one of the reasons I think I like him so much is probably one of the same reasons so many people enjoy Christopher Nolan movies, is because he writes most of his own movies. He did win, like I said, best screenplay for this film, and there's a reason for that, because the script drives home the point and will tug at every single one of your emotions throughout the film. This script is directly out of the Cameron Crowe playbook of screenwriting. When you think of those other great scripts that he's had, everything from Say Anything. If you go back and watch Say Anything, the dialogue in that movie is so incredible and so powerful. And the same thing is here. The script and the dialogue and the interactions of these characters who truly come from completely different worlds. I mean, you have the William character who is just this 15-year-old kid who's grown up in this unbelievably sheltered life, finally getting to go on tour. And then you have the absolutely iconic Penny Lane character who is... I'm going to say it right now. I'm not a fan of Kate Hudson. The romantic rom-coms she does, what she do about 20 of them with Matthew McConaughey, just not a fan of hers as far as her acting, but she is absolutely spectacular in this role. This is a role that you could almost say was made for her, because I cannot picture anyone else in this role of Penny Lane than Kate Hudson. She just nails it, and part of the reason she nails it is because of the script, because of the dialogue she has with this completely naive character on one side, but then you also have on the other side, she's dealing with this rock and roll guy. And this idea of these worlds colliding is what drives the point home and what drives the film. And truly, just pay attention to some of the dialogue and some of the interactions, even from the peripheral characters. Just the dialogue between them and the script. And I'm a big person when I watch movies. One of the things I watch for is the script. When you hear me do music reviews, which I'll be doing some here in a little bit, you're going to hear me talk a lot about songwriting, because I think that's one of the biggest components of music and how you can frame a song. And it's the same thing here with movies. If the script isn't good, if the script isn't there, if there's not dialogue, if there's not believable interaction between the characters, then the movie falls flat to me. And I mentioned this in my Napoleon Dynamite review, that's one of the reasons the movie fell so flat for me, whereas here, the dialogue and the interaction with these characters is just absolutely outstanding. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of where you really see this shine in the movie. The first one that really comes to mind is when Russell, the lead character, is on the phone with Frances McDormand, William's mom. And there's just this dialogue that goes on between them for about a minute that is just pure gold when you're watching it. And then there's another scene where Penny and William are out by the tour buses. And they're getting into this almost argument, but Kate Hudson plays it so well because she's hiding her emotions so well as to what is actually happening that you feel for her. You can see it on her face of what's going on, but the dialogue doesn't give it away. The dialogue, she tries to play it off and be sarcastic about it. Just so many great moments in this movie like that you need to look out for. There's some other amazingly shot scenes. Cameron Crowe does a great job of putting you into this late 70s, early 80s, because that's the time frame that this takes place. You have a reference to David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust in this movie, so you really can kind of see the time frame that this takes place in. And there's a scene, or a couple different scenes, that put you right there, in that time frame, in that moment, right? And then one scene in particular that's just absolutely beautifully shot, and there's no dialogue in it at all, is the scene where Kate Hudson is in the empty convention center or ballroom or whatever you want to call it by herself. And it's a scene that's very reminiscent of another Cameron Crowe movie, Elizabethtown, where you see Orlando Bloom and Kirsten Dunst in that empty ballroom after the wedding by themselves. It's very reminiscent. It's almost like he kind of mirrored himself in this scene. So it's, once again, look for those small moments as you're watching this. Now, of course, you know some of the famous scenes. One of the most famous ones is as the main character is up on the roof, as Russell's up on the roof high, and I'll talk about that in a second, and the I Am a Golden God scene, which is, when you go back and watch it, even today, is funny, because it does give you a chuckle, but also sad because you realize what's actually going on here. Now, I want to talk about some of the things that I didn't quite like about the movie, and I'm going to preface this by saying the reason I didn't like these things is because I became more aware of them. I've made no apologies, and I've said it since the first review. I am a Christian. I believe Christ is our Savior, and I'm not going to get preachy here, okay? But watching movies that I've watched before, watching movies I've watched in the past, before I became a Christian. I became a Christian in 2013, so it's been kind of fairly recent. But watching movies that I would have watched before in the past, there are things that I am more sensitive to now in watching these movies, and one of them is language. In this movie, as great as the script is, this is not a family movie. And I'll tell you that right now, okay? There's a reason this film is rated R, and it's a big portion of it is because of the cursing in it. So if you are adverse to things like that, I would suggest watching this movie when it's on TV, because I don't think taking the cursing out of it takes nothing away from the movie at all. I will say that the version of the film that I watched is on Amazon Prime, and it's the director's cut version, which has actually about 40 minutes worth of extra footage in it. It runs about 2 hours and 49 minutes, and the original theatrical version runs about 2 hours and 2 minutes, so there's a lot more in the director's cut that you're going to find. But I think that the cursing was something that kind of took me out of the movie at times. And the other thing was, of course, the predominant ridiculous amount of drug use in the movie. Once again, when I watched it the first time, I'm sure I wasn't as sensitive to those things as I am now. It detracted from the movie. And there's one very, very pivotal scene in the movie that does involve drug use that I understand why it's in there, and I understand that this was part of life and still is part of life for some acts on the road. And that in this pivotal scene, you need to have that scene in the movie to build the drama between the characters and to develop the story between the characters. But it still took me out of it a little bit. So if you are sensitive to those kind of things in a film, I would suggest watching the TV edit of the movie, because I don't think taking the cursing out will detract at all from the movie itself and your enjoyment of the movie itself. Let's talk about some of the scenes I absolutely loved. I already mentioned the scene with with Russell and William's mom on the phone. The scene with Penny Lane in the ballroom by herself was outstanding. Another scene I think is shot so well is when Penny Lane is finally on the plane and she finally realizes how alone that she is. And there's just this look that Kate Hudson goes through. It's her entire body language. Her entire face changes from this happy, upbeat facade that she always puts up throughout the whole movie to looking around and seeing that empty seat beside her on the plane and realizing how alone she actually is. And then she comes to realize, well, no, she's not alone. There's this boy, 15-year-old boy, who she has fallen in love with kind of, sort of, as well. And that's when she looks out the window and sees him standing there. And that scene, that entire about a minute and a half scene, is done so well. And finally, save the best for last. To me, that last scene, it's not necessarily the last scene. It's about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes before the movie ends. But the scene where Russell shows up thinking he's going to Penny's house, but ends up at another house instead. That entire scene, the body language, the dialogue in it, the way those characters interact standing in that living room is just some of the, probably about the best 5 minutes you will see on film in a long, long time. If you know the scene I'm talking about, I'm sure you'll agree with me there. Just the way it's shot. Zooey Deschanel has a very bit part in this, but she plays so well in that specific scene, right? As William's sister. It's such a great, great scene. Worth going on YouTube and just watching that scene. If you never watched the whole movie, just go to watch that scene. So, those are kind of some of the standout things and things that jumped out at me. One thing that really jumped out at me, and it really hit me as I was watching the movie, and I'm going to get serious here for just a moment, all right, is this film reminds me of how much of a talent we lost when Philip Seymour Hoffman overdosed. Because he is so outstanding in his small little role as the anti-establishment rock critic in this movie. And I just want to say, before I go any further with the review, if you or anyone you know is struggling with some type of addiction, please go seek help. Please reach out to someone and get the help that you need. I just cannot stress that enough. Please do that. Just pick up the phone and call whoever it is that you need to call and ask for that help that you need. So, I want to talk about some things you might not have realized were in this movie. There were 3 cameos that really jumped out at me that one's not necessarily a cameo, but there were 2 cameos and one bit part that I completely forgot were in this movie. Because did you know Dwight Schrute is in this movie? Yes, Rainn Wilson has a very small part as one of the Rolling Stones staff that I recognized. And also, if you watch Modern Family, Eric Stonestreet is in this movie as a cameo as well, which was pretty cool, recognizing those 2 characters. But the one thing that I really want to point out, because I once again have no problem saying when I'm not a fan of somebody, and I am not a fan of Jimmy Fallon. I just don't think his late night show is good, is funny. I don't think he's a good interviewer. However, he is great in the role as the second manager in this movie. And to me, he has what is probably my favorite line, well, 2 favorite lines from the whole movie. One is when he says, "Hey, I didn't invent the rainy day. I just have the best umbrella." I just love that line so much when he's trying to sell the band on him. And then the one that makes me laugh every time, especially today, is if you think Mick Jagger is going to be doing this when he's 50 years old, you're sadly mistaken. It's another one of those great kind of throwaway lines that when you think Mick Jagger's, 80 years old today and still going strong, it kind of makes you chuckle when you watch this movie 20 years after it came out. So, if you haven't figured it out by now, you're not going to be seeing a score of 4 or 5 from me on Almost Famous because, yes, it truly is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it holds up to this day. If you've never seen it, I hope I didn't spoil too much of it for you, and I don't think I did. You'll still enjoy watching it. If you haven't watched it in a while, go watch it again, because it is one of those movies that really should be kind of in your yearly viewing rotation. That's how good it is. My score for Almost Famous, 8.5 out of 10. There are some small things, not the drug use and the cursing, because I don't count those against films because I understand how that's films are made. But there are a few small continuity errors that I picked up on, and there's a few small little side characters that kind of bring the film down a little bit and kind of get the film out of its own rhythm. The Anna Paquin character in particular really, I think, kind of throws you off in your rhythm, but that's very, very minor, very, very minor. So I can't give it a perfect score, but it's almost there. 8.5 out of 10, my score for Almost Famous. Remember, if you have a movie you would like me to review, you can go ahead and head to the website, patricksreviews.com, and send me an email there, or just go to any of the social media accounts, and you can also drop us a message on any of those. And be sure when you're over there to subscribe to those social media accounts. Coming up on the show in the next couple episodes, we're going to be reviewing great films like Gone Baby Gone, Interstellar, and one called Dan in Real Life. I'm giving my good friend who suggested and made me sit through Napoleon Dynamite another chance with this one to see if it kind of gets her back on the good graces, let's say. And of course, I'm joking out there, Samantha, with that. And also, one of the things I do keep on mentioning is we're going to be doing music very, very soon. The very first album I'm going to be reviewing is actually the very first album I ever purchased with my own money. So it's going to be really cool. I've been re-listening to it a couple times to get the review ready. And the week of Christmas, that week before Christmas, of course, on a Saturday this year, that week before Christmas, I'll be reviewing 5 Christmas movies. And I have already picked out what they will be. I will be revealing them on social media, most likely very soon here, but we're going to be reviewing 5 Christmas movies on that week before Christmas. Thanks, everybody, for watching, for listening. If you subscribe to the podcast, thank you there. And until next time, everybody, it's Patrick with Patrick's Reviews. Go out there and just be good people. Just be nice to each other this time of the year, and do good for someone out there. It doesn't even have to be somebody you know. Just go do good. I'll talk to you again real soon. Have a great